I heard Bradley Harlan's voice crack across the gas station as he slammed his palm against my truck, the impact echoing through the lot. "Move your broke-ass truck before I drag you off this pump myself, boy." Without warning, he shoved me in the chest, trying to push me away from the pump. Nearby customers froze mid-step, watching the confrontation unfold. Bradley stepped closer, jabbing a finger inches from my face, while his wife Lydia lifted her phone, recording with a smug grin. "You hear me? People like you don't belong around money like mine." The shove was meant to provoke a reaction, the kind that would end with sirens and handcuffs. But I didn't move. I just stood there, silent and steady, while the rich couple kept pushing. The mistake they were making was simple. They had no idea who they were picking a fight with. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Sarah Jenkins's gas station in our small Georgia town, the heat rippling off the cracked asphalt. I guided my dusty pickup toward pump number 3, boxes from my mother's house shifting in the truck bed. My throat felt dry. All I wanted was fuel, water, and a moment of peace. Through my rearview mirror, I noticed the gleaming black SUV pulling in behind me, its polished surface a stark contrast to the worn-down station. A skinny teenager, Ethan, according to his name tag, looked up from behind the counter through the storefront window, his face tightening with worry. I stepped out of my truck, my boots crunching on loose gravel. Yellow violation notices fluttered on the station's front door in the hot breeze. The paint was peeling, and one of the security cameras hung loose from its mount. The SUV's door flew open before the engine even died. "Move that piece of junk!" A tall man in an expensive suit stormed toward me, his face red with anger. "You're blocking the premium pump." I kept my movements measured, deliberately slow. 15 years as a Navy SEAL had taught me to read situations like this. The man's stance, his clenched fists, the entitled rage, all warning signs. "Sir, I'll be done in a few minutes," I said evenly, reaching for the pump. "Bradley, darling, is there a problem?" A woman in designer clothing stepped out of the SUV, her heels clicking against the pavement, her smile sharp as a blade. "This individual won't move his truck, Lydia." Bradley Harlan's voice dripped with contempt. Sarah Jenkins hurried out of the station, her face drawn with tension. "Mr. Harlan, there's plenty of room at the other pumps." "Stay out of this," Lydia cut her off, then turned to me. "Young man, I don't think you understand. This isn't that kind of establishment." The weight of her words hung in the humid air. Several customers had stopped to watch, phones appearing in careful hands. Ethan pressed his face against the store window, frozen. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "I'm a paying customer, same as you." Bradley stepped closer, cologne and anger radiating off him. "Listen, boy." "I'm not your boy." My voice remained level, but steel ran through it. "I'm a veteran trying to buy gas." Lydia's laugh was like ice cracking. "Oh, how perfect. The angry black man plays the veteran card. We know your type. Causing trouble, trying to intimidate decent people." I felt the familiar burn of injustice in my chest, but my face remained calm. I'd faced worse in combat. Still, my mother's recent death made each word sting more than it should. Sarah tried again. "Please, Mrs. Harlan." "You should control your customers better," Lydia snapped. "Unless you want another inspection, those violations on your door aren't going away on their own." More phones appeared. Ethan's hands trembled against the glass. I could see the boy wanted to help, but was terrified of the consequences. "Move the truck," Bradley punctuated each word with a step forward, "or I'll have it moved for you." "Step back, sir," my command voice slipped out, the tone that had guided men through firefights. Instead, Bradley shoved me hard in the chest. "Don't you dare give me orders!" "That's assault," someone in the crowd called out. "He threatened us first." Lydia's voice rose theatrically. "You all saw it. He's dangerous." I held my ground, hands visible, stance balanced. I'd spent too many years in combat to give this man any excuse. But I also wouldn't back down. Not here. Not with my mother barely in the ground and these people trying to strip away my dignity. "Your husband put his hands on me first," I stated clearly, making sure the phone cameras caught my calm demeanor. "I haven't moved. I haven't threatened anyone." "Liar," Bradley's face twisted. "You people always lie, always playing victim while you're the real threat." "I have it on video." Ethan squeaked through the window, then immediately looked terrified at his own courage. Lydia's eyes flashed. Record all you want. Who do you think runs our county here in Georgia? Who signs your precious permits, Sarah? Who decides which businesses pass inspection? The threat hung heavy in the air. Sarah's face fell, years of harassment visible in her expression. Bradley smirked and turned back to me. Last chance. Move or things get ugly. They're already ugly, I replied softly. But I won't be bullied. Bullied? Bradley barked out a laugh. You haven't seen anything yet. The larger man's hand moved toward the SUV's door, and my body instantly shifted. Years of training took over. My weight settled into my legs, hands loose but ready, mind calculating angles and distances. I saw Bradley's fingers reaching, recognized the familiar movement of someone going for a weapon. In that fraction of a second, my grief and exhaustion vanished. Combat awareness flooded my system. Time seemed to slow as I watched Bradley's hand move closer to the door handle, muscles coiling with lethal precision. Bradley's hand shot toward the SUV door. In that same heartbeat, I moved with practiced efficiency, closing the distance in 2 rapid steps. My left hand clamped down on Bradley's reaching arm, while my right hand secured the man's collar. Before Bradley could shout, I pivoted, using the larger man's momentum against him. Bradley's expensive shoes left the ground. The world spun. His back slammed into the hot pavement with a meaty thud that drove the air from his lungs. "Stay down," I commanded, my voice steady as I held Bradley pinned with one knee. The movement had been clean, controlled, the kind that breaks neither bones nor laws but leaves no doubt about skill. "Get him!" Lydia shrieked, her polished demeanor cracking. "Carlton, stop him!" A thick-necked man in a dark suit burst from a car parked near the station's entrance. The bodyguard moved with the clumsy aggression of someone used to intimidating civilians, not fighting trained operators. I released Bradley and stepped back, positioning myself between the pump island and the SUV's open door. My eyes never left the approaching threat. Stance relaxed, but ready. Carlton charged in, swinging. I slipped the wild punch and grabbed the bodyguard's extended arm. One sharp twist locked the joint. A sweep took the man's legs. The guard's head cracked against the pump island with enough force to stun but not concuss. "Hold still," I growled, securing the larger man in a control position that made every attempt to struggle produce sharp jolts of pain. Don't make this worse. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 20 seconds. Bradley lay gasping on the ground, his suit covered in dirt and oil stains. Carlton was trapped and grimacing, and I hadn't even broken a sweat. Phones recorded everything. The crowd had grown, drawing closer now that the danger was contained. Ethan pressed his face against the store window, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's a SEAL takedown if I ever saw one," a muscled man in a Marine Corps t-shirt called out. He stepped forward, recognition lighting his weathered face. "Wait a minute. Chief Hale, Senior Chief Jordan Hale." I gave a slight nod, maintaining my hold on Carlton. The Marine turned to the crowd. "This man's a decorated Navy SEAL, multiple combat tours. I served alongside his unit in Kandahar. He's the real deal." A murmur went through the onlookers. Camera phones shifted from recording to sharing. The story was already spreading. Rich couple attacks war hero at gas station. "Mr. Harlan pushed him first." Ethan's voice cracked with newfound courage. "I saw it through the window. They started it." Sarah stepped forward. "I saw it too. Mr. Hale was just trying to get gas when they attacked my husband." Lydia's scream cut through the chatter. Her face was a mask of outrage, but her eyes were calculating. "Look what he did. He assaulted Bradley. He's attacking our security." Someone called the police. "They're already on their way, Mrs. Harlan," a man near the back of the crowd called out. He lowered his phone with a sympathetic nod toward her. I recognized the setup. The man had called before the fight even started. Bradley pushed himself to his feet, his expensive suit ruined. "You're finished," he spat at me. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I replied evenly. "A bully who finally picked the wrong target." Lydia's face shifted. The hysteria vanished, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. She pulled out her phone and began making calls, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. "Yes, Sheriff. A violent assault at Sarah's gas station. He attacked Bradley and Carlton. Yes, that's right. No, we don't feel safe. He seems unstable. Yes, multiple witnesses. Sirens wailed in the distance, far too close for a normal response time. I told Carlton to get up, releasing the hold. The bodyguard scrambled away, adjusting his jacket with shaking hands. Sarah moved closer to me. "They're going to twist this," she whispered. "They always do." "Already happening," I replied quietly. The crowd began to shift uneasily as 3 sheriff's cruisers screamed into the parking lot, lights flashing. Deputies poured out with hands on their weapons. "There he is!" Lydia pointed at me, her voice trembling with perfectly practiced fear. "He just started attacking people. My husband tried to reason with him." The deputies spread out, surrounding me with practiced efficiency. Their movements suggested they'd done this before, containing situations for the Harlans. "Hands where we can see them," the lead deputy barked. I complied, my movements slow and deliberate. I had expected this. The Harlans hadn't earned their power through direct confrontation. They'd built it through systems and influence, turning the law itself into their weapon. Lydia's smile was barely visible now, but the ice in it could have frozen hell. She watched the deputies close in, her hand sliding possessively around Bradley's arm. The message was clear. This fight was just beginning, and the next round wouldn't be settled with physical skill. The deputies moved with practiced efficiency, splitting the crowd into controlled groups. Their actions felt coordinated, as if they'd done this dance before. 2 officers herded witnesses toward the storefront, while others established a perimeter around the pump island. "Everyone stay calm," the lead deputy announced. "We're going to take statements one at a time." I watched them isolate Ethan first, steering the teenager away from Sarah and toward a patrol car. The boy's earlier courage crumbled under official pressure. His shoulders hunched as a deputy towered over him, notebook open. I mean, it happened kind of fast," Ethan stammered. "Think carefully about what you say," the deputy warned. "False statements are serious business." Lydia's phone buzzed constantly. She answered calls with theatrical distress, her voice carrying across the parking lot. "Yes, it was terrifying. No warning at all. Bradley tried to reason with him. We feared for our lives." The bodyguard Carlton had recovered his composure. He stood straight back beside Bradley, reciting a practiced version of events. The suspect became aggressive immediately. Mr. Harlan attempted to de-escalate. Sarah tried approaching one of the deputies. "I own this station. I saw everything." "Ma'am, we'll need to discuss your business permits," the officer cut her off. "There seem to be some compliance issues that require immediate attention." The threat landed. Sarah's face tightened, but she stepped back. Years of experience had taught her when pushing meant punishment. Bradley's designer suit was still dusty, but his confidence had returned. He held court with 2 deputies, gesturing dramatically. "Completely unprovoked. I was simply trying to access the premium pump when this man exploded. You should check his military record. Probably one of those unstable veterans." I remained still, hands visible, maintaining deliberate calm despite the rage building in my chest. A young deputy approached me, hand resting on his holstered weapon. "Sir, we need your ID and insurance information. There's been property damage reported." "Property damage?" I kept my voice level. "The only damage was when Mr. Harlan assaulted me." "That's not what witnesses are saying." The deputy's radio crackled. "Your name and ID, sir." "Jordan Hale." The deputy repeated it into his radio. Another officer nearby stiffened at the name, eyes widening with recognition. He turned sharply toward his superior, whispering something urgent. Lydia's perfectly manicured hand paused mid-gesture during her latest phone call. Her eyes locked onto me with new intensity. The calculation in her gaze shifted from simple contempt to something deeper. Recognition, then alarm, then predatory focus. "Hale?" She ended her call abruptly. "Any relation to Gloria Hale?" I met her stare. "My mother." "How interesting." Lydia's smile didn't reach her eyes. She touched Bradley's arm, whispering rapidly in his ear. The lead deputy approached the station's entrance. "We'll need to review the security footage." "System's acting up," another officer called from inside. "Feed seems corrupted." Sarah stepped forward. "That's impossible. I checked the cameras this morning." "Ma'am," the deputy cut her off again, "please step back while we conduct our investigation. In fact, given the safety violations we're observing, we may need to temporarily close this location." More patrol cars arrived. Men in plain clothes emerged, carrying tablets and citation books. They moved with purpose toward the station's office. "Mr. Hale," the lead deputy returned, "we'll need a complete statement. You're not under arrest, but I strongly advise you not to leave town. We take assault cases very seriously here." "Assault cases?" My voice hardened. "There are dozens of witnesses who saw—" "We'll sort out what happened," the deputy interrupted. "For now, return to your residence and wait for our call. Any attempt to contact the Harlans will be considered harassment." Sarah edged closer to me while the deputies conversed with Lydia. "You need to go," she whispered, "now, before they find a reason to lock you up." "This isn't right," I growled. "Welcome to our world," Sarah replied bitterly. "They own everything here. Courts, cops, contracts. That's why nobody fights back. Go, please." I studied Lydia's face one last time. The polished socialite mask had returned, but underneath, I sensed something had changed when she heard my name. This wasn't random rich people racism anymore. She knew something about my family. I walked to my truck, deputies watching every move. The box of my mother's belongings sat in the passenger seat untouched. As I started the engine, I caught Ethan's defeated expression. The boy's earlier truth crushed under official pressure. Bradley's voice carried across the lot. "We'll need restraining orders filed immediately." I pulled onto the main road, hands tight on the wheel. The sun was starting to sink, painting the sky bloody orange. My mother's house was only 10 minutes away, but my combat instincts screamed that something was wrong. The attack, Lydia's reaction to my name, the deputy's immediate response, it all felt orchestrated, triggered by my presence. I turned onto my mother's street, braking hard at the sight of her small home. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Wood splintered around the lock. Someone had already been there, searching for something they feared I might find. My boots crunched over broken glass as I entered my mother's house. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the chaos. Every drawer had been yanked out, their contents dumped and scattered. Photo albums lay splayed open, their pages bent and torn. The small desk where my mother used to write letters was upended, its drawers smashed. I moved through the wreckage with military precision, checking each room for intruders before pulling out my phone. My fingers hovered over 911, then stopped. The deputy's earlier behavior flashed through my mind. Instead, I called Ruth Coleman. "Someone broke in," I said when she answered. "They tore the place apart." "I'll be there in 5 minutes," Ruth replied, her voice tight with concern. "Don't touch anything." I continued my assessment while waiting. The television in my mother's jewelry box remained untouched. The intruders had ignored obvious valuables, focusing instead on papers, files, and storage boxes. This wasn't a robbery, it was a search. Ruth's ancient Buick pulled into the driveway minutes later. Despite her age, she moved quickly up the walkway, her back straight and proud. She gasped at the splintered doorframe but didn't hesitate to enter. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, taking in the destruction. "They didn't waste any time, did they?" "You don't seem surprised," I observed. Ruth's lips pressed into a thin line. "Your mother changed in the last year, became secretive, started keeping files locked away, making copies of things. She told me people in town were scared of what she knew." "What people? What did she know?" "She wouldn't say exactly. Said it was safer if I didn't know the details." Ruth picked up a fallen picture frame, brushing glass from the photo of Gloria Hale at her teaching desk, but she was worried. Started telling me where important papers were hidden just in case. We began gathering scattered documents, trying to determine what might be missing. I found old report cards, utility bills, church programs, the paper trail of an ordinary life. But something felt off about the search pattern. The intruders had been thorough but targeted, as if they knew what they were looking for. "Check the Bible," Ruth said suddenly. "Your mother always kept important things in there." The family Bible lay face down near the bookshelf. I lifted it carefully. Several pages were bent, but taped inside the back cover was a small key and a folded note in my mother's neat handwriting. My hands shook slightly as I read, "If they come for you, the station is only the beginning. Trust no one in uniform. Open locker 214. "She knew," I said quietly. "The attack at the station, it wasn't random when they heard my name." "Your mother never believed the official story," Ruth said. "About your father, I mean." My head snapped up. "What?" Ruth sank into the one upright chair. Samuel Hale didn't abandon you, Jordan. Your mother never believed that, no matter what people said. She spent years gathering proof, but she was careful, so careful. The room seemed to tilt. I'd carried the weight of my father's abandonment for decades, building my life around that hole. Now the foundation cracked. What happened to him? I don't know all of it. Gloria protected me from knowing too much, but she said Samuel discovered something about land deals in town, properties being stolen through forged papers and corrupt officials. He tried to expose it. Ruth's voice dropped. Then he disappeared. The police said he just left, but I looked at the key in my palm. The metal felt warm, vital, and now the Harlans panicked when they heard my name. They send people to search the house. Whatever my father found, whatever my mother kept collecting, it's in this locker. Through the windows, we could see the sun sinking toward the horizon, painting the scattered papers in deep orange. Soon, it would be dark. We need to go now, Ruth said, standing. Before anyone else gets to that locker, I'll drive. My car's less likely to be recognized. I nodded, tucking the key and note into my pocket. We did a final sweep of the house, making sure we hadn't missed any other hidden messages. The violation of the space felt personal now. An attack not just on property, but on truth itself. As we stepped onto the porch, the last sunlight caught Ruth's face. Despite her age, her expression was fierce. Your mother protected those secrets for years, waiting for the right time. Maybe this is why, so you could finish what your father started. Night was falling as we reached my truck. I gripped the key like a weapon, feeling its edges bite into my palm. Each revelation today had stripped away another layer of what I thought I knew about the town, about my parents, about myself. The key promised answers, but also danger. Whatever was in that locker had already cost my father's life and haunted my mother's final years. The dying light painted shadows across the ransacked house. Somewhere in town, the Harlans were probably already planning their next move. But for the first time since the gas station confrontation, I felt centered. The path ahead was clear, even if it led straight into darkness. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the bus station's storage area, casting a sickly glow across rows of metal lockers. I moved quietly despite my size, scanning the numbers as Ruth followed close behind. The night clerk barely glanced up from his phone, more interested in his screen than the late visitors. 212, 213. I stopped at 214, the key already in my hand. The locker was smaller than I expected, about the size of a microwave. Whatever my mother had hidden here had to be compact but important enough to protect. The key slid in smoothly. I hesitated for a heartbeat, aware that opening this door would change everything. Then I turned the key and pulled. Inside, I found a stack of yellowed papers bound with twine, several manila envelopes, and what looked like old photographs. On top lay a cassette tape in a clear plastic case, and beneath it a thick file folder. Written across the tab in faded ink was a single name: Samuel Hale, my father's name. The man I'd spent decades believing had walked away. "We should take it all," Ruth whispered. "It's not safe here." I gathered everything into my jacket, but curiosity made me pull out one photograph before closing the locker. The image showed a younger black man in an army uniform, standing proud beside a for-sale sign on an empty lot. The man's posture was military straight, his expression serious but hopeful. "That's your father," Ruth said softly, "taken about 6 months before he died." The word hit me like a physical blow. Died? Not left. Ruth touched my arm. "Let's get somewhere safe first. These walls have ears." We moved toward the exit, but I couldn't help glancing at more photos. Each one seemed to center around the same piece of land. In some, my father stood with other men pointing at documents. In others, he appeared to be documenting construction work. "That's where Sarah's station is now," Ruth explained as we walked. "Back then, it was just an empty lot, but valuable because of the highway plans. Your father discovered something wrong with the deeds, properties being stolen from black families through fake tax sales and forged papers. He started gathering proof. We stepped into the night air, which still held the day's heat. I was about to ask more when I noticed a dark sedan idling across the street, its headlights off. The driver's silhouette was too still, too purposeful. "Get in the car," I said quietly to Ruth. "Act natural." We walked to her Buick. I positioned myself between her and the sedan. I helped her in, then slid into the passenger seat, keeping my movements unhurried despite the tension building in my chest. "They followed us," I said as Ruth started the engine. "We can't go back to either house, they'll be watching." "My place," Ruth decided. "I've got good neighbors who notice everything. Harder for them to try anything without witnesses." She pulled out slowly, and the sedan's engine hummed to life. Ruth took a series of deliberate turns through residential streets, confirming we had a tail. I watched our pursuer in the side mirror, noting how they maintained a steady distance. "Your father was a good man," Ruth said as we drove, perhaps trying to keep us both calm. "Served 2 tours in Vietnam, came back wanting to help veterans buy homes, especially black veterans who kept getting denied loans. That's how he stumbled onto the fraud, following paper trails, finding patterns. And the Harlans were behind it. They were newer money back then, but ambitious. Bradley's father had died, leaving him and Lydia the family real estate business. They started buying up land cheap, but the deals seemed wrong. Your father found evidence of forged signatures, fake tax liens, threatened owners. Black families who'd owned properties for generations suddenly found themselves in legal battles they couldn't afford to fight. I opened the file in my lap, using the passing streetlights to read. Inside were copies of deeds, letters, and legal notices. My mother's neat handwriting filled the margins with dates and connections. "The night he died," Ruth continued, her voice dropping, "Samuel had called your mother, excited. Said he finally had proof that would stick. Something about original deeds hidden in an old storage room. He went to get them and never came home. And the police ruled it an accident, said he must have left town, abandoned his family. Your mother knew better, but she had you to protect, so she started gathering evidence quietly, building a case year by year. She was still working on it when she got sick. The documents in my lap felt heavier now, weighted with decades of hidden truth. My father hadn't been a coward who ran. He'd been a warrior who stood his ground, and my mother hadn't been a victim of abandonment, but a widow fighting a silent war. We turned onto Ruth Street, a quiet row of well-kept older homes. No streetlights here, but porch lamps cast warm pools of light on small front yards. Ruth killed the headlights before turning into her driveway. "We need to find someone in law enforcement who isn't bought," I said. "Someone who will look at this evidence without running to the Harlans first." "Maybe that young deputy who seemed uncomfortable today," Ruth suggested. "Officer Kayla Vargas. I've seen her stand up to the sheriff before." Before I could respond, I heard the distinct crunch of tires on pavement. The sound stopped abruptly, followed by the quiet click of headlights switching off in the darkness. Tires crunched on gravel as headlights died in the darkness. I moved fast, pulling Ruth away from the windows. "Kill the lights," I whispered. "Lock everything." Ruth's hands trembled, but she didn't hesitate as she secured deadbolts and drew curtains. The house creaked with age, making it harder to track movement outside. I pressed against the wall beside the kitchen window, my combat instincts kicking in as I mapped angles and entry points. Footsteps scraped across the back porch. Not even trying to be quiet, they were confident, used to victims who cowered. A shadow passed the kitchen window, followed by the metallic scratch of someone testing the back door's handle. "Two at the rear," I breathed to Ruth, motioning her toward the hallway closet. "At least one more circling front. Stay hidden." The doorframe splintered as someone threw their weight against it. I positioned myself in the darkened kitchen doorway, using the old house's layout to my advantage. The first man burst through with a knife already drawn, expecting fear, finding fury instead. I grabbed the intruder's knife arm and slammed him face first into the doorframe. Bone cracked. The knife clattered to the linoleum. Before the man could shout, I drove a knee into his kidney and twisted his arm until tendons popped. Glass exploded from the side window. The second attacker dove through, rolling to his feet with practiced violence. Streetlight glinted off brass knuckles as he swung. I ducked, letting the punch crater the wall where my head had been. The kitchen erupted into chaos. I grabbed a cast-iron pan from the dish rack, deflecting another punch that would have shattered my jaw. I countered with the pan's edge, catching my attacker across the temple. The man staggered but didn't drop. They crashed into Ruth's china cabinet, glass shelves shattered. The brass knuckles caught my shoulder, sending needles of pain down my arm. I answered by driving my elbow up under the man's chin, following with a knee to the sternum that doubled him over. The first intruder was crawling for his knife. I kicked it under the stove, then seized a handful of the second man's hair and introduced his face to the kitchen counter. Once, twice. The brass knuckles fell from limp fingers. "Mr. Harlan wants that tape tonight," the first man gasped, still trying to sound threatening through broken teeth. "Said to make sure you got the message." I hauled him up by his collar. "Message received." I slammed the man's head into the doorframe again, letting him crumple. "Here's my reply." I dragged both unconscious bodies onto the front porch, arranging them where the third attacker could see my handiwork. A car door slammed in the darkness. Tires squealed as the sedan fled, leaving their bleeding partners behind. Inside, Ruth emerged from hiding, pale but composed. She surveyed her ruined kitchen with remarkable calm. "They'll be back," she said, "with more men, more guns." "I know." I checked the bodies for weapons and ID before they could regain consciousness. Nothing to identify them. Professionals. Then we can't stay here. "No, but we can't keep running either." Ruth began sweeping broken glass with fierce determination. "The Harlans have done this for decades, sending men in the night, making problems disappear. We need help. The police are in their pocket." "Not all of them." Ruth stopped sweeping. "That young deputy today, Officer Kayla Vargas, she's been fighting the corruption from inside for years. My friend at the courthouse says Kayla's been building her own case, documenting every time evidence disappears or witnesses change their stories." I remembered the deputy's careful neutrality at the gas station, how she'd watched the Harlans with contained disgust. "You trust her?" "I trust that she hasn't been bought. And right now, that's all we've got." We spent the next hour hiding the evidence from the locker. Ruth showed me a crawl space beneath her pantry floor, a remnant from Prohibition days when the house had belonged to bootleggers. The tape, photos, and documents would be safe there until we knew who we could trust. "Go before dawn," Ruth insisted, pressing a piece of paper into my hand with an address. "Kayla lives off Cedar Street. She'll be leaving for her shift soon. Catch her before she changes into uniform." "What about you?" "I'll call Pastor Michael Reed. Stay with him until we know it's safe. Those men won't risk attacking a preacher's house in broad daylight." She touched my bruised knuckles. "Your father would be proud, you know. He fought them with paperwork and truth. You're fighting them with everything you've got." I left as the sky began lightening, grief and rage mixing with newfound purpose. My father hadn't abandoned us. He'd died trying to expose corruption. My mother hadn't been paranoid. She'd spent years gathering evidence. Now it was my turn to finish what they'd started. The sheriff's office parking lot was empty except for a few patrol cars. When I pulled in, dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of gray and pale gold. Officer Kayla Vargas stood waiting by her personal vehicle, dressed in civilian clothes, watching my approach with careful assessment in her eyes. The sun hadn't cleared the buildings yet, leaving the sheriff's office parking lot in blue-gray shadow. Kayla leaned against her personal car, arms crossed, scanning the empty lot as I approached. Her civilian clothes, jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, made her look younger, more vulnerable than the deputy who'd stood rigid-backed at the gas station. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "They watch this place." "The incident report," I said. "How fast did they change it?" Kayla's jaw tightened. 15 minutes. I was typing the true version when the sheriff himself walked in. Said he'd handle it personally. By the time I checked later, your assault on the Harlans was officially documented, complete with 2 witness statements I never took. And you just accepted that? No. Her voice held controlled anger. I saved my original, started a separate file. Been doing that for 3 years now. Every time evidence disappears, every witness who suddenly changes their story, every charge that gets mysteriously dropped. But I can't help you openly. They're watching all of us. I glanced at the empty patrol cars. How deep does their influence go? The sheriff, 2 judges, half the county board, most major business owners. The Harlans don't just have money. They own the machinery of power itself. Cross them, you lose your job. Fight them, you lose everything. I reached into my jacket and withdrew the deed I'd taken from the locker. Kayla studied it, eyes widening at the date and the property description. "This is the original deed to the land where Sarah's station sits," she said. "But according to county records, the Harlan Development Company has owned that plot for 30 years. Check the name on that deed. She did, then looked up sharply. Samuel Hale. Any relation? My father. Kayla handed the deed back carefully, like it might burn her. There were rumors before my time, but old-timers still whisper about it. A black veteran who challenged some of Bradley Harlan's early land deals. He disappeared right when Bradley's real estate empire started growing. The official story was he abandoned his family, moved up north. He didn't abandon anyone. I showed her the file bearing my father's name. He was killed, and my mother spent years gathering proof. Jesus, Kayla ran a hand through her hair. That explains why they're so focused on Sarah's station. There must be something there they need to keep buried, literally or figuratively. What do you mean? They've been trying to force Sarah out for months. Code violations, supplier pressure, sudden bank audits. Yesterday wasn't random. They want that land, and they're getting desperate. The sun finally cleared the buildings, sending long shadows across the parking lot. Kayla checked her watch. I need to change for shift. But listen, Sarah's not just fighting for closure anymore. If that property connects to your father's death, they'll destroy her to keep it. I was already heading for my truck. The station would be opening soon, and I needed to warn Sarah. But Kayla called after me. One more thing. That kid who works there, Ethan, he was recording on his phone before we confiscated it. But these days, most phones auto-upload to the cloud. Might be worth asking if he can still access the original video. The morning rush was just starting when I pulled into Sarah's station. She stood behind the counter arguing with someone on the phone. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her spine was still straight. No, you listen, she was saying. I've been buying fuel from your company for 6 years. You can't just cancel our contract without— Hello. She slammed the phone down. Cowards. Problems. They're choking me out. Sarah scrubbed her face. First, the bank freezes my business account for suspicious activity. Then, the county inspector shows up with a list of violations that'll cost thousands to fix. Now, my fuel supplier cancels with no notice. They're not even pretending it's legal anymore because they're running out of time, I said. I laid my father's deed on the counter. This land matters more than we knew. Sarah studied the document, connecting pieces. Your father owned this plot before the Harlans. He died trying to expose their land theft scheme. And I think something here could prove it. The bell chimed as Ethan hurried in 20 minutes late. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. I'm sorry, he blurted. My mom said they called her boss, said I might have stolen from the register. They're trying to get her fired unless I change my story about yesterday. Did you? I asked quietly. No, but Ethan glanced around nervously before pulling out his phone. I was recording when Mr. Harlan shoved you. The deputies deleted it, but I have automatic cloud backup turned on. It saved before they could touch it. He pulled up the video. The quality was shaky, but the audio was clear. Bradley's racist taunts, the physical assault, Lydia's practiced manipulation of the crowd, irrefutable evidence of what really happened. We need to move this somewhere safe, I said. Back it up where they can't reach it, and you need to stay close to the station for now, both of you. Why? Sarah asked. I nodded toward the street. Through the window, we could see Bradley Harlan's distinctive black SUV parked across the intersection. He sat in the driver's seat, not even trying to hide his surveillance, watching the station like a vulture circling wounded prey. The late morning sun beat down on the gas station's cracked pavement. I watched Bradley Harlan's SUV through the storefront window while Sarah tried to calm another angry supplier on the phone. Ethan nervously restocked shelves, jumping at every car door slam. I understand that, Sarah said into the receiver, her knuckles white. But we have a contract through December. She listened, face hardening. So just like that, after 15 years, you're cutting us off. No notice. Another pause. Fine, you do what you have to do. She slammed the phone down. That's the third supplier today. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. How long can you operate? I asked. Maybe 3 days of fuel left. After that? She shook her head. The door chimed. 2 men in county inspector uniforms strode in, clipboards ready. The shorter one wore a satisfied smirk. Ms. Jenkins, he announced, emergency safety inspection. We just had one last week, Sarah protested. New complaints. He was already writing. Potential fuel contamination, structural concerns, fire hazards. The taller inspector circled the store, marking violations with theatrical size. Expired permit display, improper storage, non-compliant electrical panel. Those permits are current, Sarah said. I updated everything last month. Not according to our records. The short inspector thrust a paper at her. Stations closed until these violations are addressed, effective immediately. Ethan's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. What is it? I asked quietly. People calling me a liar, saying I better keep my mouth shut about yesterday. Ethan's hands shook. They know where my mom works. I made a decision. Get your things. I'm taking you home. The inspectors watched us leave, smirking as they placed bright red closed notices on the door. Through the window, Bradley Harlan raised his coffee cup in a mocking toast. Ethan lived in a small ranch house on the east side. His mother, Linda Pike, answered the door in her waitress uniform, fear evident in her tired eyes. They called the restaurant, she said before Ethan could speak. Said there might be problems if Ethan keeps lying about Mr. Harlan. I can't lose this job. We barely make rent as it is. Mom, I'm not lying, Ethan protested. I have the video. I know, baby, she hugged him. But these people, they own half the businesses in town. One word from them, and I'm blacklisted. We can't fight them. I recognized the defeat in her voice. This was how the Harlans maintained control, not just through money and violence, but by holding entire families hostage to basic survival. I'll protect your son, I promised, but we need his truth to stop them. Linda studied me. Like they stopped your father. The question hit like a physical blow. You knew Samuel Hale. Everyone knew what happened to him. We just learned to stay quiet. She touched Ethan's shoulder. Be careful, both of you. On the drive back, I stopped at Oakwood Cemetery. I needed to visit my mother's grave, draw strength from her memory. But as I approached the plot, rage filled my chest. The headstone had been defaced with black paint. Flowers were torn and scattered. A crude message was sprayed across the marble. Leave before you get buried next to them. This desecration felt worse than Bradley's attack. That had been public violence expected from a bully. This was intimate violation, a warning that nothing, not even my grief, was sacred. By evening, I gathered Ruth, Kayla, and Sarah in Ruth's living room. The cassette tape from the locker sat on the coffee table like a live grenade. Are we sure we want to play this? Kayla asked. Once we know what's on it, we can't unknow it. My mother hid it for a reason, I said. I inserted the tape into Ruth's old player and pressed play. Static crackled. Then voices emerged through the noise, an argument recorded from what sounded like outside a window. The deed transfers were legal. A woman's voice, younger but unmistakable. Lydia Harlan. Like hell they were, a man shouting back. I saw the originals. You forged those signatures. You have no proof. Lydia again, cold now. And if you keep spreading lies, there will be consequences. I already copied everything. The man's voice held no fear. By morning, everyone will know how you stole that land. A crash, scuffling sounds. The tape went silent. Kayla leaned forward. If that's really Lydia Harlan's voice. It's her, Ruth said quietly. I'd know that snake anywhere, even 30 years younger. Then the station property isn't just valuable real estate, Kayla said, watching the sun set through Ruth's window. That land could be what connects everything. The fraud, the cover-up, your father's death. No wonder they're desperate to control it. The dining room table at Ruth's house groaned under the weight of scattered papers, old maps, and county records. I stood behind Kayla as she traced her finger across a yellowed property diagram, comparing it to modern satellite images on her laptop. Look at this, Kayla said, tapping the screen. The parcel numbers don't match up with the current records, but the boundaries are identical. She overlaid the images. Sarah's station sits exactly where these disputed properties converged 30 years ago. Sarah leaned in, squinting at the documents. Those were all black-owned businesses, every single one, Ruth confirmed, her voice heavy with memory. The hardware store, the barber shop, even old Mr. Wilson's repair garage, all gone within 2 years through tax sales, Kayla added, pulling up scanned deeds. But the timing's suspicious. Each property was seized for supposedly unpaid taxes right after Samuel Hale started asking questions. I picked up one of the original deeds, studying my father's signature, where it appeared as a witness. He was trying to prove the sales were rigged. Your mother never stopped looking, Ruth said softly. Every weekend she'd go through microfiche at the library tracking down old records. She knew the Harlans were systematically pushing black families out, but she needed proof that would stick. Ethan, who had been quietly working on his laptop, spoke up. I got more of the footage back. He turned the screen to show us. The cloud backup saved chunks before anyone could delete it locally. You can clearly see Mr. Harlan shoving first. Good work, I said, noting how the teenager sat straighter at the praise. But we need something stronger than just the assault. Kayla, what about that coroner's file? Kayla rubbed her temples. It's restricted. Accessing it would definitely cost me my badge if anyone found out. You've seen how they operate now, I pressed. They're not going to stop at just closing Sarah's station. I know. Kayla stood and paced the room. Give me an hour, I'll copy what I can. While we waited for Kayla's return, Sarah spread out the current station blueprints. The Harlan development plan calls for complete excavation of the site, new foundation, underground parking, the works. She traced the proposed dig zones. They're not just trying to run me out of business. They need every inch of that ground cleared because something's buried there, I concluded. Something they don't want, found during a legal construction project. Ruth nodded slowly. The night your father disappeared. He said he was meeting someone at Wilson's garage, right where the station stands now. Kayla returned with a thick manila envelope, her face grim. I got the file, but someone's been tampering with it. Half the autopsy photos are missing and the toxicology report looks altered. We spread the remaining documents across the table. The official cause of death listed accident/misadventure, but Kayla pointed out inconsistencies in the responding officer's statements. These injury patterns don't match a fall, she said. And look at the timeline gaps. Nearly 2 hours unaccounted for between the first 911 call and when they transported the body. Ethan, still working on recovering footage, suddenly sat up straight. There's something else weird in the video. Right before the deputies arrived, Mrs. Harlan made a phone call. The camera caught her saying something about Hale, and just like his father. The room went silent. I felt cold anger settle in my chest. She recognized my name at the station. That's why they panicked. They thought your mother's evidence died with her, Ruth said. Then you showed up at the exact spot they've been trying to clear for years. Through the dining room window, I caught a flash of movement, a shadow crossing between houses. I tensed. We're being watched. Everyone instinctively pulled back from the windows. Kayla quickly gathered the coroner's documents, while Sarah rolled up the blueprints. Ethan saved his work and closed his laptop. We need to secure what we have, I said, and someone needs to guard the station. They'll make a move soon now that we're piecing this together. I'll take these files to my friend at the state police, Kayla offered. Get them somewhere safe. I should get back to the station, Sarah said. I still have to drain the underground tanks before they force closure tomorrow. I'm coming with you, I insisted. Ruth, can Ethan stay here tonight? He'll be safer. Ruth was already making up the guest room. Of course, I'll call his mother. We split up carefully, watching for followers. I drove Sarah's truck while she rode shotgun, both scanning the dark streets. The station's lot was empty when we arrived, the overhead lights casting harsh shadows between the pumps. You don't have to stay, Sarah said as she unlocked the door. I can handle the tanks myself. This isn't about the tanks. I did a quick sweep of the building's perimeter. They know we're close to something. Tonight's their best chance to stop us. We worked in tense silence, Sarah managing the fuel systems while I watched the lot. Every passing car made us freeze. Every distant sound snapped our attention to the windows. As midnight approached, the low rumble of engines cut through the quiet. Headlights swept across the storefront, illuminating the space between pumps where multiple shadows emerged from idling vehicles. The station's floodlights cast harsh shadows across the empty fuel islands as 3 figures emerged from their vehicles. I tracked their movement, noting their practiced spacing and the weapons visible in their hands. The night air hung thick with humidity, making even the fluorescent lighting seem to blur. Through the office window, I could see Sarah and Ethan still counting the day's receipts, unaware of the danger. The closest attacker carried a tire iron, gripping it like someone who knew how to inflict maximum damage. Another held what looked like a taser, its electronic crackle barely audible. The third man angled toward the office door, suggesting they'd planned this assault carefully. I moved first, using the concrete barrier beside Pump 4 as cover. The man with the tire iron swung hard, the metal whistling through empty air as I ducked and drove my shoulder into the attacker's midsection. We crashed into a metal hose reel, the impact echoing across the empty lot. "Lock the door!" I shouted toward the office, hearing Sarah's startled gasp even as she scrambled to secure herself and Ethan inside. The second attacker lunged with the taser, but I had already rolled, sweeping the man's legs while simultaneously wrenching the tire iron free from the first assailant. The weapon clattered across the concrete as I regained my footing, every muscle coiled with controlled violence. "You picked the wrong night," I growled, seeing the third man testing the office door handle. The taser wielder recovered quickly, jabbing the crackling device toward my ribs. But I had fought through worse in far darker places. I caught the man's wrist, twisted sharply until bones ground together, and used the attacker's own momentum to slam him face first into the metal pump housing. Blood sprayed across the price display. Inside the office, Sarah was already on her phone, her voice tight with fear as she called Kayla. Ethan crouched beneath the counter, his eyes wide as he watched the violence unfold through the window. The first attacker had retrieved his tire iron and came in swinging wild, desperate arcs. I blocked one strike with my forearm, pain blazing through the bone, but managed to step inside the man's guard. I drove 3 rapid strikes into the attacker's solar plexus, each impact precise and devastating. As the man doubled over, I seized his collar and hurled him bodily across the hood of their own vehicle. The third man had given up on the office door and was now circling back, a knife glinting in his hand. I recognized the stance of someone with military training. This one would be more dangerous than the others. "Bradley said you were supposed to disappear tonight," the knife wielder snarled, slashing in tight, controlled patterns. "Should have taken the hint and left town." I caught a slash on my jacket sleeve, feeling the blade's kiss but not letting it slow me. I countered with a lightning combination of strikes, forcing the attacker back toward the vehicles. When the man's heel caught the concrete barrier, I seized the opening. I trapped the knife hand, twisted until tendons popped, and drove my knee up into the attacker's floating ribs. The first man had struggled back to his feet and was trying to retreat to their car. I caught him by the back of his jacket, lifted him bodily, and drove him straight through the vehicle's windshield. Glass exploded outward as the man went limp, half sprawled across the dashboard. Distant sirens began to wail, growing louder with each passing second. The taser wielder had regained consciousness and was stumbling toward their second vehicle, leaving a trail of blood from his shattered nose. The knife fighter tried to follow, but I caught him with a brutal hook that sent him sprawling. As the attacker's vehicle peeled out of the lot, a black canvas bag tumbled from the open door. I scooped it up, keeping one eye on the knife wielder, who lay groaning on the pavement. Kayla's unmarked car slid into the lot moments later, lights dark but engine running. She took in the scene with professional efficiency. The blood, the shattered windshield, the wounded attacker, and the office where Sarah and Ethan were still safely barricaded. "This just went way beyond harassment," Kayla said, checking the pulse of the unconscious man half embedded in the windshield. "This was attempted murder." "Check the bag," I said, tossing it to her, dropped when they ran. Inside, we found a leather-bound ledger filled with columns of numbers, property addresses, and company names. Kayla's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "These are shell companies," she said, "all tied to Harlan land acquisitions going back decades. This is exactly what we needed." More sirens approached as the night sky began to soften toward dawn. Sarah finally emerged from the office, helping Ethan out on shaky legs. The boy's face was pale, but his jaw was set with determination. "I got video of the whole thing," he said, holding up his phone through the office window. "They can't deny this was attempted murder." The first rays of morning painted the station in cool blue light as I surveyed the aftermath. Blood stained the concrete, glass glittered across the pavement, and 2 of their attackers lay unconscious. But we had survived. More importantly, we had proof. "We take this public now," I said, watching the sun begin to rise. All of it. Morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows of Pastor Michael Reed's church office, casting colored patterns across the worn carpet where I and my allies gathered. Coffee cups and hastily grabbed breakfast pastries littered the desk as we spread out our evidence. "The church holds 400 people," Pastor Reed said, his deep voice steady despite the tension in the room. "And word's already spreading. We'll be full by tonight. Kayla laid out copied files from the sheriff's department, her fingers trembling slightly. These go back 20 years, cases buried, evidence lost, witnesses pressured into changing statements, all protecting Harlan interests. Sarah stood at the window watching cars pass on the street below. People are scared, but they're also tired. Last night proved the Harlans won't stop at threats anymore. Ruth touched the bruises darkening on my forearm where I'd blocked the tire iron. Your mother would be proud seeing you stand up like this. She never stopped believing the truth would come out. Ethan sat hunched over his phone, determination etched across his young face. I've got most of the gas station footage restored. You can clearly see Mr. Harlan shove first, reach for something in his car. No way they can spin this. I studied the church's polished wooden podium where I would soon speak. My reflection in the finish looked tired, but resolute. This isn't just about the attack anymore. It's about everything they've buried. Every family they've hurt, every lie they've told. Pastor Reed nodded gravely. The church should be a place of truth. Tonight it will be. We worked through the morning organizing testimony and evidence. Kayla brought a surprise. Dr. Henry Wells, the retired county coroner who'd handled Samuel Hale's case decades ago. The old man's hand shook as he signed a statement. I knew that death certificate was wrong, Dr. Wells said quietly. Blunt force trauma doesn't look like a heart attack, but back then, when the Harlans wanted something buried, it stayed buried. By early afternoon, cars were already filling the church parking lot. People gathered in small groups speaking in hushed voices. Inside, Pastor Reed's volunteers set up extra chairs in the aisles. Local reporters positioned cameras near the walls, though notably none from stations the Harlans influenced. Remember, Kayla told us as evening approached, once we start, we have to move fast, get everything out before they can shut us down. The sanctuary filled quickly as darkness fell. Wooden pews creaked under the weight of bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. The air grew thick with tension and summer heat despite churning ceiling fans. I recognized faces from the gas station, from streets where people had looked away, from years of silence finally breaking. Pastor Reed opened with a prayer for courage and truth. Then I stood, moving to the podium with military precision. The room went absolutely still. My name is Jordan Hale, I began, my voice carrying to every corner. Most of you know me as the man from the gas station incident, but I'm also the son of Samuel Hale, a veteran like me who died in this town 30 years ago trying to expose land theft and corruption. I described the attack, then went deeper into decades of buried evidence, forged documents, stolen property, and lives destroyed. My words stripped away pretense, naming names and specific crimes. When I spoke of finding my mother's vandalized grave, several people openly wept. Sarah followed, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger. They've tried to crush my business for 3 years, cut off supplies, filed false violations, threatened my workers, all because this land holds evidence they want buried forever. Ethan stood next, pale but determined. He played the restored video, and gasps filled the sanctuary as Bradley Harlan's true actions became clear. The teenager's voice cracked. I was scared to speak up before, but I'm more scared of staying quiet while people get hurt. One by one, others rose. A former bank clerk described being forced to freeze accounts. A county worker admitted changing property records under threat. An elderly woman spoke of her family's farm being seized through forged tax documents. The momentum built like a wave. Pastor Reed watched faces in the crowd transform from fear to resolve. Kayla stood ready with copies of internal files proving years of systematic corruption. The room crackled with the energy of long-suppressed truth finally breaking free. I returned to the podium, holding up the evidence from my father's case. Tonight, we end 30 years of silence. Tonight, we prove that money and power don't make you untouchable. Tonight, the heavy wooden doors burst open with a crash that echoed like gunfire. Armed officers in tactical gear poured through multiple entrances, weapons raised. People screamed and pressed back in the pews. A commander's voice boomed over a megaphone. This is the county sheriff's department. We have a warrant to search these premises for evidence tampering and conspiracy to interfere with an ongoing investigation. Everyone remain seated with your hands visible. Police boots thundered against wooden floors as officers swarmed through the sanctuary. Their tactical gear looked alien against the church's stained glass and polished pews. People pressed back, hands raised, faces twisted with fear and disbelief. "Everyone stay where you are." The commander's voice echoed off the high ceiling. "This is now a crime scene." I started forward, but 3 officers converged on me instantly, pushing me back from the podium. I could have fought them. My combat training screamed to react, but I forced myself still, knowing violence would only prove their lies about me. "Deputy Vargas," the sheriff himself stepped through the chaos, pointing at Kayla. "Turn in your badge and weapon. You're suspended pending investigation for tampering with official records." Kayla's face hardened as she unclipped her badge. "This is wrong and you know it." "Cuff the Pike kid," another officer ordered, moving toward Ethan. "We have security footage of him stealing from the gas station register." "That's a lie." Ethan struggled as they grabbed his arms. "I never stole anything, Ms. Jenkins. Tell them." Sarah tried to intervene, but officers blocked her path. "He works for me. You can't just—" "Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested for interference." The crowd's panic swelled. Some tried to record with phones, but officers ordered devices put away. Pastor Reed's attempts to calm the situation were drowned out by shouted commands and frightened voices. In the chaos, someone shoved Ruth hard. She stumbled backward, hit a wooden chair, and crumpled to the floor with a cry of pain. Her head struck the edge of a pew on the way down. "Ruth!" I lunged toward her, but officers caught my arms, twisting them behind my back. I could have broken free, but Ruth's voice stopped me. "Don't fight them," she gasped. "That's what they want." Pastor Reed knelt beside her, cradling her head. Blood trickled from a cut near her temple. "She needs medical attention." "An ambulance is already outside," the sheriff said smoothly, as if they'd planned for this too. They were forcing everyone out when Sarah's phone buzzed. Her face went pale as she read the message. "The station. Someone's reporting smoke at my station." Through the church's front windows, we could see an orange glow reflecting off low clouds across town. My stomach knotted with fury and despair. The Harlans hadn't just counterattacked here. They'd struck everywhere at once. Pastor Reed drove me to the station while Sarah rode with Ruth in the ambulance. We arrived to find the building engulfed in flames. Fire trucks crowded the lot, hoses hammering water into the inferno. The heat was so intense, it forced us back across the street. "Look at those burn patterns," I said through clenched teeth. "Those are deliberate ignition points. This was no accident." But the fire marshal was already talking to news cameras using words like electrical malfunction and old wiring. No one would investigate further. No one would question the official story. By midnight, every local channel carried the same narrative. Documents presented at the church were proven forgeries. Gloria Hale, they claimed, had fabricated evidence against the Harlans out of bitterness over old business disputes. The church meeting was branded a hoax, a shameful attempt to smear respected community leaders. I and Pastor Reed sat in the hospital waiting room while doctors examined Ruth. The pastor's shoulders sagged with exhaustion and defeat. "In one night," he said quietly, "they've destroyed everything we built. Kayla's career is finished. Ethan faces criminal charges. Sarah's lost her business, and Ruth—" His voice cracked. I stared at my hands, still smelling smoke from the station fire. They didn't just attack us. They made sure everyone watching would think twice about standing up again. The evidence gone. They took everything during the raid, even Ethan's phone. A nurse finally led us to Ruth's room just before dawn. She lay small and fragile against white sheets, monitors beeping steadily beside her. The cut on her temple had been stitched, and dark bruises were spreading across her face. Her eyes fluttered open as we approached. Despite her weakness, awareness and urgency filled her gaze. She motioned me closer. "There's something—" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Something I should have told you sooner. Save your strength," I said gently, but Ruth gripped my hand with surprising force. "Your mother. She was there that night. The night your father died." I went very still. "What?" "She saw everything. Saw who killed him." Ruth's words came in short bursts between shallow breaths. She recorded their names, their confession on a second tape, one nobody ever found. "Where?" I leaned closer. "Where is it?" But Ruth's eyes were closing, exhaustion finally claiming her. "I don't know." She never told me, just said she made sure they'd never find it. Her hand went slack in mine as she drifted into medicated sleep, leaving me to watch the sun rise over a morning that felt like total defeat. Dawn light filtered through hospital blinds as I sat beside Ruth's bed. Machines beeped steadily, marking each breath she fought to take. Her face was bruised from the fall, making her look fragile against the stark white pillows. "I should have told you years ago," Ruth whispered, her voice rough with pain and regret. "Your mother, she saw more than anyone knew." I leaned forward, careful not to disturb the IV lines running into her arm. "What did she see, Ruth?" That night, after Samuel confronted them about the land deeds, Ruth's fingers twisted in the thin hospital blanket. "Your mother followed him. She was worried because he'd been getting threats." A muscle tightened in my jaw. "She witnessed what they did to him, not the act itself, but right after." Tears welled in Ruth's eyes. She heard voices near the old pump house, found Samuel. Too late to help, but she had her little tape recorder with her. She'd started carrying it everywhere, gathering proof of their schemes, and she recorded what she heard. "Both Harlans were there arguing about what to do," Ruth nodded. "Your mother hid and captured everything. Their panic, their plans to cover it up, names, dates, exactly how they'd been stealing land. Why didn't she take it to the police?" "The police?" Ruth's laugh was bitter and weak. "Half of them were already bought. The other half were too scared to move against the Harlans. She knew they'd destroy the evidence and probably kill her too, so she made 2 recordings." I straightened. 2. The first one, the one you found, was just enough to make them nervous, but the second, Ruth's voice strengthened slightly. The second had everything. Their actual voices admitting what they'd done. Proof that would stand up even decades later. Where did she hide it? She never told me exactly. Said it was safer if I didn't know. Ruth's eyes drifted closed for a moment, fighting exhaustion. But she left me one hint. It's buried under the place they wanted emptied. The gas station land. I breathed. That's why they've been so desperate to force Sarah out. They need to clear that property before anyone digs too deep. Your mother knew they'd never stop watching her house or her regular habits, so she hid it somewhere they'd never think to look, right under their stolen land. Ruth's hand found mine, squeezing with surprising strength. "Find it, Jordan. Find it before they destroy everything else." I kissed her weathered knuckles gently. "Rest now. I'll be back soon." Outside the hospital, Kayla was waiting in her personal car, no longer in uniform. Her badge and gun were gone, but her eyes burned with determination. "How is she?" Kayla asked as I got in. "Holding on, and she just gave us one last chance." I explained what Ruth had revealed. "We need to search that station ground before their cleanup crews arrive." We picked up Sarah at her sister's house. She looked exhausted but resolute, still wearing clothes that smelled of smoke. Together, we drove to the burn station just as morning traffic was picking up. The building was a blackened skeleton. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze, and the air still held traces of char. We parked across the street, watching official vehicles come and go. "There," Sarah pointed, "the old service panel near Pump 4. It's original to the property. Concrete poured decades ago. We never had reason to break into it because the newer lines run different paths." We waited until the scene was momentarily clear, then moved quickly. The panel was cracked from age and heat, but it took all 3 of us to shift it. Beneath lay packed earth and old pipes. "Look for anything that doesn't belong," I said, digging carefully. Kayla's hand struck something solid. "Here." Together we uncovered a metal ammunition box sealed against moisture and time. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, we found a stack of original deeds showing how the Harlans had stolen land piece by piece. Photographs documented the night Samuel died. Dark shapes, a car matching Bradley's from that era, evidence of violence. E.T. This, Kayla held up a gold cufflink crusted with old blood. Elegant script spelled out G.H. over the Harlan family crest, but the real prize was a small tape recorder still containing its cassette. We huddled in Kayla's car to listen. The quality was poor, but the voices were clear enough. Bradley Harlan sounded younger, panicked. "He's dead. What do we do?" "Calm down." Young Lydia's tone was controlled, almost cold. "This is what happens when people don't know their place. Now focus. We need to move the body before anyone sees. The deeds he took, Already handled. I've got Judge Morris ready to sign whatever we need, but you need to pull yourself together. This changes nothing about our plans. Nothing. Lydia, we just killed a man. No, you killed him. Remember that if you ever think about growing a conscience. Now help me clean this up. We have an empire to build. I sat back, pieces clicking into place. It was her. Lydia was the real power all along. Bradley was just the public face, the attack dog. She pointed at targets. Listen to her voice, Kayla said. No hesitation, no remorse. She turned a murder into an opportunity. My father confronted Bradley about the land theft, I said slowly. But Lydia was the one who saw the bigger picture. She used his death to lock Bradley into her control. Every move since then, the intimidation, the corruption, the racism, it all served her plan. We sat in heavy silence as traffic flowed past, the morning sun climbing higher over the ruins of Sarah's station. After decades of darkness, the truth was finally in our hands. Afternoon shadows stretched across manicured lawns as luxury cars rolled up to the Harlan estate. Inside a small church office across town, I studied blueprints of the venue while Kayla made final calls to state investigators. The evidence goes to 3 separate teams, Kayla said, hanging up her phone. No single person can bury all of it this time. Pastor Reed spread photos of the original gas station attack across his desk. My congregation will testify about years of harassment. The Harlans can't intimidate an entire community at once. Ethan, still shaken from his night in jail but determined, clutched a thumb drive. The cloud backup is ready. I've got screenshots proving when the footage was uploaded before they tried to delete it. The deeds show exactly how they stole the land, Sarah added, sorting weathered documents, property by property, family by family. I checked my watch. The gala starts in an hour. The Harlans think the station fire destroyed everything. They'll be relaxed, celebrating another victory. You sure about going in alone? Kayla asked. They need to see me coming. No surprises, no hiding. I straightened my tie. Let them think I'm desperate, making one last scene. Pastor Reed gripped my shoulder. The community's behind you this time. No more silence. We split up, taking different routes to the estate. I parked down the street, watching guests arrive in evening wear. Police directed traffic while valets jogged between expensive cars. String music drifted from the garden. Inside, crystal glasses clinked as donors mingled with county officials. The air smelled of money, perfume, cigars, and power. Bradley Harlan held court near a fountain, laughing too loudly. Lydia floated between groups in diamonds and silk. Every inch the gracious hostess. I waited until the crowd was thick before walking straight through the main entrance. Heads turned. Conversations stuttered. Bradley's laugh cut off mid-sentence. Well, look who's crashing our party. Bradley's voice carried across the garden. Shouldn't you be helping clean up that unfortunate electrical fire? I moved steadily forward. Guests shifted away, sensing confrontation. Electrical fire? Is that what we're calling arson now? Careful with accusations. Bradley's smile was razor sharp. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Your evidence was quite flammable, wasn't it? The church raid was clumsy, I said, desperate. You must have been terrified of what we'd found. Found? Bradley spread his arms. All I saw was a sad attempt to slander good people with forged papers, your poor mother's delusions. Let's ask Lydia what she thinks. I turned to where she stood, frozen, champagne glass halfway to her lips. About delusions, about forgeries, about the night my father died. Her composure cracked for just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. So did others. Security! Bradley barked. Remove this man. I pulled out the small tape player. Before anyone moves, let's listen to something interesting. The first notes of the recording cut through party noise. Young voices from decades ago captured in darkness. Bradley's panic, Lydia's cold control. Bradley's face went slack. Lydia's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on marble. Turn that off, she commanded, but her voice shook. Why? I raised the volume. Worried about the part where you tell Bradley how to move my father's body, or the part about Judge Morris signing whatever you needed? State investigators emerged from the crowd, badges gleaming. Kayla appeared with them holding files. Pastor Reed led in a group of community members. News cameras appeared at the garden entrance. This is absurd, Bradley sputtered. Some fake recording? Not fake. Ethan stepped forward with his laptop. Like this security footage from the gas station, the real version before your people deleted it. The cloud backup caught everything. Sarah spread documents on a table. Original deeds showing how you stole land through forged tax sales. Property after property targeted because the owners were black. All these years, Pastor Reed's voice rang out. All the families you drove away, the lives you ruined. Did you think we'd stay silent forever? Bradley's swagger crumpled. Lydia, tell them we never... But Lydia was already backing away. I had nothing to do with this. Bradley handled all property matters. I was just the one giving orders. Bradley's face reddened. That night at the pump house, those were your plans. Your idea to use the judge. You killed him, Lydia hissed. Your temper, your stupid pride. Because you pushed me. Everything was always your scheme, your perfect plan. Donors stared in horror. Officials edged toward exits. Cameras rolled as the Harlan's united front imploded. Mrs. Harlan, a state investigator stepped forward. We have some questions about financial records. Lydia bolted for a side door. Movement flickered behind me, someone reaching for me with deadly intent. The armed loyalist lunged at me from behind, but years of combat training kicked in. I spun, catching the man's wrist as a blade flashed in the dim corridor light. We crashed into a service cart, sending champagne glasses shattering across marble floors. Go! The attacker shouted toward Lydia's retreating form. I'll handle him! I drove my knee up, breaking the man's grip on the knife. The blade clattered away as we grappled against wood-paneled walls. The loyalist was military-trained too. His moves were precise, professional. But I had fought better men in worse places. I caught my attacker's next punch and used the man's momentum to slam him face first into a framed painting. Glass cracked, blood sprayed. The man staggered but came back swinging wild haymakers. I blocked, stepped inside the man's guard, and struck 3 rapid blows: throat, solar plexus, knee. The attacker folded with a wheeze. I left him gasping on imported tiles and sprinted after Lydia. She had a head start through the service corridor, but her heels betrayed her. The sharp clicks echoed off walls, leading me straight to her. She reached a rear exit and fumbled with the push bar. I caught the door as she opened it. Running from your own party. Get away from me. She swung her heavy purse like a weapon. I caught it easily, then had to step back as she clawed at my face with manicured nails. Her polished mask had cracked completely, revealing the raw fury beneath. You're just like your father, she spat. He wouldn't stay down either, wouldn't accept his place. My place, my voice was steel. My place is right here, watching you fall. State investigators appeared at both ends of the corridor. Kayla was with them, her badge gleaming as she drew her weapon. Lydia Harlan, you're under arrest. From the main hall came Bradley's desperate shouts. It was her plan, everything, the land schemes, the murder, all of it. Check her offshore accounts. Lydia's face contorted. You weak, stupid man, I gave you everything. Ma'am, hands where we can see them, an investigator ordered. I watched my father's killer slowly raise her hands, diamonds catching the light. In that moment she looked ancient and small, a creature who had fed on fear for so long she'd forgotten how to live without it. Back in the main hall, guests pressed against walls as Bradley was cuffed, still ranting. Cameras rolled while Kayla read charges: conspiracy to commit murder, assault, fraud, witness intimidation, arson, evidence tampering. The list went on. I placed the evidence on a table where press could film it. Bloodstained cufflink, original deeds, both recordings, Ethan's restored video, each item another nail in the Harlan's coffin. The sheriff's department actively suppressed evidence in multiple cases, Kayla announced. State authorities are freezing all questionable land transfers pending full review. Pastor Reed's congregation members stepped forward one by one, finally giving voice to years of abuse. Sarah described the station fire. Ethan played the unaltered attack footage. The Harlan's carefully crafted image shattered completely as reporters scribbled frantically. I watched Bradley and Lydia being led out separate doors, their evening wear ruffled, their wrists cuffed behind designer clothes. No slipping away this time, no burying the truth. Their fall was happening in full view of the cameras, impossible to hide or deny. Over the next 3 months, justice ground forward like a glacier, slow but unstoppable. The county froze dozens of corrupt property transfers. State investigators dug through decades of records. The truth about Samuel Hale emerged piece by piece until his name was officially cleared. Sarah received legal protection and insurance payments to rebuild the station. The community rallied around her, donating labor and materials. Even the fuel distributor came crawling back, offering a better contract. Now, on a bright autumn afternoon, a crowd gathered for the reopening. The rebuilt station gleamed with fresh paint and new pumps. A memorial plaque honoring Samuel Hale hung prominently near the entrance. Sarah Jenkins gripped giant scissors, grinning as she prepared to cut the ribbon. Ethan Pike watched from behind the register, pride replacing his former uncertainty. Ruth Coleman sat on a freshly painted bench out front, her cane propped beside her, satisfaction glowing in her eyes. I stood at Pump 4, the exact spot where the Harlans had tried to break me. The concrete still held traces of scorch marks from the fire, but new life had grown around them. Children played nearby while parents filled tanks and grabbed coffee. The fear that had gripped the town was gone, replaced by something stronger. I touched the dog tags hanging beneath my shirt, thinking of my father. Samuel Hale had died trying to expose the truth. My mother had spent years gathering evidence. Now their work was finally finished. The station would never again be just a gas station. It was a monument to justice, delayed but not denied. A reminder that some things were worth fighting for, no matter how long it took. Sarah raised the scissors. The crowd held its breath. With one clean snip, she cut the ribbon in front of Hale Freedom Station. As I stand here at Pump 4 in our rebuilt station in this quiet Georgia town, the sun warming the fresh concrete where everything once nearly shattered, I feel this deep ache in my chest that turns into the strongest fire I've ever known. The most valuable lesson this whole nightmare taught me isn't about winning fights or taking down bullies with money and power. It's about the quiet, unbreakable courage that lives in every family's blood, and how one person's stand for truth can heal generations of pain. My father didn't abandon us. He died fighting to protect black families from stolen land and forged lies. And my mother carried that same fight in secret for decades, hiding evidence while her heart broke every single day, just so I could one day finish what they started. When Bradley and Lydia Harlan shoved me, called the cops, burned our station, and tried to bury us under their influence, I could have walked away like everyone else in town had for 30 years. But something inside me, grief mixed with pride, wouldn't let me. I learned that real strength isn't loud muscles or fancy suits. It's choosing to speak when fear screams the loudest, trusting that the truth you carry will outlast every lie they tell. Watching Ethan find his voice, Sarah rebuild stronger than before, and Ruth fight through bruises with that fierce light in her eyes showed me we're never alone when we stand together. Life will always throw rich bullies, corrupt systems, and heartbreaking loss at you. But if you honor the ones who came before by refusing to stay silent, justice doesn't just come. It rises like the sun over a town finally free. That lesson still brings tears to my eyes because it proves no darkness is forever when good people decide enough is enough. If this story moved you the way it moved me, heart and soul, drop a comment right now and tell me, what's the one time in your life you chose to stand up when everything felt stacked against you? And where in the world are you watching from today? If you want more powerful, tear-jerking stories that remind us all why courage and truth always win in the end, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our family so you never miss the next one that might just change how you see your own battles. I can't wait to hear from you. Let's keep this fire burning together.